Tell me about the last time you saw him alive.
On the same day that he passed away. He had went to the Racket Club that day. At morning before I got there, him and Jenny and Billy Smith, they went to the Racket Club. And they come in after I...
She cleaned his rooms for 15 years. She made his bed every morning and brought him his coffee every night. But there was one thing Mary Jenkins never cleaned up. A secret so shocking that it's taken her 47 years to find the courage to speak. For nearly 5 decades, Mary has carried a burden that no one should have to bear alone. She was there in the final months. She saw what others missed. She heard what Elvis whispered when he thought no one was listening. And what she witnessed in those last days at Graceland will change everything you thought you knew about the king of rock and roll. This isn't another story about pills or fame or the pressures of stardom. This is about a moment so private, so personal, that Elvis made Mary promise she would never tell a soul. He looked her in the eyes, grabbed her hands, and made her swear on everything she held dear that this secret would die with her. But Mary is 83 now, her health is failing, and the weight of what she knows has become too heavy to carry to her grave. She's decided to break her silence, not for money, not for fame, but because she believes the world deserves to know the truth about the man behind the legend. What she's about to reveal will shatter everything you thought you knew about Elvis Presley's final year. It will explain mysteries that have puzzled fans for decades, and it will show you a side of the king that no one, not his family, not his closest friends, not even his doctors, ever saw. Stay with us because what Mary Jenkins is about to tell you is absolutely jaw-dropping. Mary Jenkins wasn't supposed to become Elvis's confidant. She was just a young woman from Memphis who needed a job in 1962. She had 3 kids at home, a husband who worked nights, and bills that wouldn't pay themselves. When she heard Graceland was hiring, she applied thinking she'd be lucky to get a job cleaning toilets. But something about Mary caught Elvis's attention from day one. Maybe it was her gentle way of speaking. Maybe it was how she never asked for autographs or tried to take pictures. Or maybe it was simply that she treated him like a regular person. Not a superstar, just a man who needed his laundry done and his meals cooked. He always said I had kind eyes, Mary remembers, her voice still soft after all these years. He told me I looked at him the way his mama used to, like he was just her boy, not the Elvis Presley. For 15 years, Mary was more than just a maid. She became Elvis's anchor to normal life. While other staff members came and went, Mary remained constant. She knew exactly how he liked his peanut butter and banana sandwiches. She knew which pajamas he preferred when he couldn't sleep. She knew when to give him space, and when he needed someone to simply sit with him in silence. Mary never sought the spotlight. She never wrote a book or gave interviews. While others sold stories to tabloids, Mary kept quiet. She respected Elvis's privacy like it was sacred. Even after his death, when reporters knocked on her door and offered money for her memories, she always said the same thing, I have nothing to say. But now, facing her own mortality, Mary has realized that some secrets are too important to take to the grave. And what she's about to share will explain why Elvis trusted her above all others, and why he chose her to be the keeper of his most devastating truth. The world saw Elvis on stage, sparkling in his white jumpsuit, commanding thousands of screaming fans. But Mary saw him in his bathrobe at 3 in the morning, wandering the halls of Graceland like a ghost haunting his own home. She saw the man the cameras never captured, the one who couldn't sleep, who ate alone, who sometimes cried when he thought no one was watching. People think being Elvis was glamorous, Mary says, shaking her head slowly. But I watched that man struggle with demons most people can't imagine. He was lonely in a way that broke my heart, surrounded by people all the time, but truly alone. In those final months of 1976 and early 1977, Mary noticed changes that worried her deeply. Elvis would disappear into his room for days, emerging only to ask for unusual things, strange requests that made no sense. He'd want ice cream at dawn, or he'd ask her to move all the furniture in the living room, only to have her put it back the next day. His sleep schedule became completely backwards. He'd be wide awake when the sun came up and sleeping when most people were having dinner. But it wasn't just his routine that changed. Elvis started talking differently. He'd have conversations with people who weren't there. He'd ask Mary questions about his childhood, about his mother, about things that happened decades ago as if they'd occurred yesterday. Sometimes he'd grab her arm and whisper urgently about things that made no sense. Conspiracies, fears, worries that seemed to come from nowhere. I'd find him sitting in the dark, Mary recalls, her eyes distant with memory, just sitting there staring at nothing. When I'd ask if he needed anything, he'd look at me like he was seeing me for the first time, like he was trying to remember who I was or where he was. The other staff members started to whisper among themselves. They'd exchange worried glances when Elvis would laugh at nothing or when he'd suddenly become angry over something trivial. But Mary never joined in their conversations. She just watched, waited, and worried. She could see something building inside him, something desperate and frightening. She just didn't know what it was. Not yet. It was during one of these strange, sleepless nights that Elvis would finally trust her with the truth that had been eating him alive. It was March 15th, 1977. Mary remembers the date exactly because it was the night everything she thought she knew about Elvis Presley crumbled to pieces. She was in the kitchen, cleaning up after another one of his late-night snack requests when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy footsteps that didn't sound like Elvis's usual confident stride. When she looked up, she saw him standing in the doorway. But this wasn't the Elvis she knew. His face was pale, almost gray. His hands were shaking. He was wearing his favorite blue silk pajamas, but they hung on him like clothes on a scarecrow. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single day. "Mary," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell somebody. I can't carry this alone anymore." She immediately stopped what she was doing and walked over to him. Up close, she could see tears in his eyes. Not the dramatic tears of a performer, but the quiet, desperate tears of a man who'd reached his breaking point. She guided him to the kitchen table, the same table where they'd shared countless midnight conversations over the years. "What is it, Mr. Elvis?" she asked gently. "What's wrong?" He took her hands in his, and she was shocked by how cold they were. For a long moment, he just stared at her, as if he was trying to decide whether he could trust her with whatever was weighing on his soul. Finally, he spoke. "Mary, I'm not who everyone thinks I am. I'm not even who I think I am." His voice was breaking. "I've been living a lie for so long that I don't know what's real anymore. And I'm scared. God, I'm so scared that if I don't tell someone the truth, I'm going to lose myself completely." Mary had never seen Elvis this vulnerable. This wasn't about fame or pressure or the demands of being a superstar. This was something deeper, something that had been tearing him apart from the inside. She squeezed his hands and said the words that would change both their lives forever. "Tell me," she whispered. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." And so he did. What Elvis revealed to Mary that night would explain his strange behavior, his isolation, his desperate need for connection. It would reveal the source of his deepest pain and his greatest fear. The truth that had been slowly killing him from the inside out. "Mary," Elvis whispered, his voice trembling, "I don't think I'm really Elvis Presley anymore. I think I'm losing my mind, and I'm terrified that everyone's going to find out." Mary sat in stunned silence as Elvis poured out the truth he'd been hiding for months. He told her about the blackouts, moments where he'd wake up on stage with no memory of how he got there or what songs he'd just performed. He described waking up in his own bed, not recognizing the room, not remembering going to sleep. He talked about looking in the mirror and seeing a stranger staring back at him. "Sometimes I feel like I'm watching myself from outside my body," he continued, tears streaming down his face.
Like the real Elvis is trapped somewhere inside, and this other person is living my life. I forget conversations we had yesterday. I forget people's names, people I've known for years. Yesterday, I couldn't remember my own daughter's birthday.
But that wasn't the worst part. Elvis revealed something even more devastating. He told Mary about the voices, not the screaming fans, but voices in his head that would whisper things, tell him to do things, make him question everything he thought he knew about himself and his life.
They tell me I'm not good enough, he said, his voice breaking completely. They tell me I'm a fraud, that I've been fooling everyone including myself. They tell me things about my past that don't make sense, but they feel so real. Mary, I'm starting to believe them.
Mary realized she was witnessing something no one else had seen. the complete mental breakdown of one of the most famous men in the world. Elvis wasn't just dealing with the pressures of fame. He was battling what we now know could have been early onset dementia, severe depression, or the effects of years of prescription drug use on his brain.
I made Colonel Parker promise to cancel my tour, Elvis continued. I told him I was sick, but I couldn't tell him the truth. How can I perform when I don't even know who I am anymore? How can I be the king when I feel like I'm disappearing?
The man who had given joy to millions was drowning in his own mind, and Mary was the only person he trusted enough to witness his complete vulnerability. She understood now why he'd been acting so strangely, why he'd seemed lost in his own home. Elvis Presley was fighting a battle no one knew about, a battle for his own identity and sanity. After that night, everything changed between Mary and Elvis. She became more than his maid. She became his anchor to reality. When he'd have episodes where he didn't recognize his surroundings, Mary would sit with him and gently remind him where he was. When the voices in his head became too loud, she'd talk to him about simple things: the weather, what she was cooking, stories about her grandchildren, anything to bring him back to the present moment.
I became his secret keeper and his caretaker, Mary remembers. No one else knew what he was going through. To everyone else, he was still the king. But to me, he was just a scared, sick man who needed someone to hold on to.
Elvis made Mary promise that she would never tell anyone about his condition. He was terrified that if word got out, his career would be over, his fans would abandon him, and his legacy would be destroyed. People need Elvis to be strong, he told her. They need the king to be invincible. If they knew the truth, it would break their hearts.